set? Okay, this is the Town of Woodbridge Board of Finance regular monthly meeting. Tonight is Thursday, November 21st, 2019. First item on the agenda is public comments, and seeing nobody here, I would like to make some public comments, but please allow me to sit in this seat and do it, okay? I'd like to just, I'd like to just address, I don't know how many of you watch on Channel 79 as much as I do, but I find as I get older, I don't sleep as much. I'm watching it at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning,
It's a
so.
cure for insomnia.
Yeah,
I've
really.
been
So, we were here for the presentation. We've heard the various parties present all the reasons they don't think this country club project is a good project. And I would just, for me anyway, they were filled with so many inaccuracies that I would like to address them if you give me a few minutes.
You're talking about members of the public.
Members of the
correct?
public,
That-
right,
that
right,
come.
right. The first thing I'd like to address, because I've heard it far too many times, is that we are not required, if we sell the land, we're not required to use that money to pay off the loan on the country club, which I think we've all indicated that that is what we would do. But one member picked up something you said, Ellen, and ran with it, and I've heard it 6 times. So what I would like to do is I'd like to poll the members of the Board of Finance. I've already spoken to 4 members of the Board of Selectmen, Mrs. Heller, Mika Cardoza, Sandy Stein, and Joe Crisco. I didn't get a chance to talk to Joe Dye or Dwight Rowland, but the 4 of them have all said, absolutely, we would pay off the note on the country club. So what I'd like to do is, I'm going to say here and now that I, as chairman of the Board of Finance, absolutely support that if we were to sell this land, that we take the money and pay off whatever the balance is on the loans, the notes at the country club of $4 million. It could be yes or no. Tom, what do you think?
No, I would agree. That would be what I would assume would be what the funds would be used for.
Okay, Paul?
I would want to pay off the loan, yes.
Okay. Ellen?
So the reason I raised it
No, I
is
know.
not because I'm opposed.
It's a matter of
to it.
fact, right.
I would just ask Tony, at the time that we get the money, is that the best use of the money? It may well be. I just didn't know that, or
Yeah.
maybe we have a very low interest rate and there's something we'd rather do. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Tony, but I don't want to make that decision without knowing the options and what we would do with it. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't do that.
All right.
I just didn't know. Tony, if you say, of course, that's the best thing, I'll say that. But if you need time to think about it, I need time to think about it.
That it's been our plan all along to pay off the note, which is why we issue notes every year.
Oh, okay.
If we
I
weren't
got it.
gonna pay off the note and risk the
bonded it.
market,
Then we would have.
like we do, we would have bonded it when we first purchased it and forgot about it.
Okay, yes, I
Tom?
would support that.
I would think that we would pay off the debt.
Yes. Mrs. Jacobs? Oh, no, Ms. Jacobs.
You know, I have 2 things. I would certainly support paying off the note if that is the best thing to do financially. But I also have a concern about limiting or in any way circumscribing either the discretion that this board exercises or what the Board of Selectmen exercises on behalf of the town in the event of some future event. I mean, and particularly in response to misstatements that are made, you know, it's a little bit like, I mean, I don't want to lecture about this, but it's a little bit like an unreasonable statement is made, forcing somebody to make a promise in response to an unreasonable statement. I don't think the discretion of this board should ever be circumscribed in that way, nor do I think that the power of the Board of Selectmen should ever be circumscribed in that way. Having said that, it's a completely reasonable thing to do,
Right.
to pay off the note.
No, but I agree with that. I think that point is very well made. And of course, I said I would think that would be the best use of the funds, but again, talking with Tony, and then who
Right.
knows what's, you know, at the point where we end up getting the funds, if it's sold, if something else is a competing interest, we'd have to consider that. But going into this, I'm assuming that that's what the money would be used for, pending, you know, something else, but.
Could I speak?
Go, yeah, sure.
Certainly, from my standpoint, I'm one member of a 6-member board, but I have always said, not promising anything, it's more of, it will be my intent, should, you know, at the time tonight, and I've always said it's my intention to do that, whether or not we can, or circumstances come up that, as Susan said, that might, you know, prohibit that for some reason. But as of right now, that is at least my intention. I'm one of 6, as I
I
said.
don't see,
so-
I don't see anything on the
Yeah.
horizon, other than the police department. And that would be a separate bond issue, and it would take time and planning, and
Right.
if this is voted on and passed in the near future, the police department isn't gonna be ready to be funded, so there'd be no other reason to use that money, so. And I think what Tony said is something we've said right along. We've been issuing
Definitely
notes.
have said that
Right,
along.
right,
Right, so-
It's been our
Correct.
intention
Right,
all along.
attention, that's the operative word there.
Okay. The second presentation, I'm gonna call it, that we heard, was a speaker who said that the mill rates in Woodbridge and Orange mirror each other almost. And the claim that she made was that we've compared our project to Fieldstone Village only because it's right over here in Orange, and it's been a very successful project. And she said that it's probably not very successful because Orange's mill rate never went down through this whole process. So I spoke to 2 members of the Orange Board of Finance, and they said, in their opinion, and in most of the opinions of the people in Orange, this has been a monumentally successful project. It's generating more than $1.4 million in taxes. They've had to put no additional personnel on for this area residency, whatever you want to call it. The only increase they've seen is in 911 calls where the police are first responders, and it's for medical, mostly for medical stuff. There's been no problems, no fire, or whatever. So, and what they said was, without Fieldstone Village, their mill rate would undoubtedly have risen, because it is certainly, when you pump $1.5 million into your tax structure, again, as they said, education, he's eaten up all of it. But without that, they would have most definitely had an increase in their mill rate. So, in the opinion of everybody I spoke to, it's been a monumental success. I know Jim Zioli touted this when he was running for first selectman this last time. He listed it as one of his biggest accomplishments. So, I disagree with that idea that it really hasn't been a big deal, because it has. The third and final item I want to bring up is the speaker who, he probably told the Board of Selectmen 20 times that I've seen that they did not do their due diligence, again and again and again. And his reason for this is because he believes in his calculations that whatever money is raised in property taxes on this project, and I'm not sitting here saying that I absolutely 100% support it, I'm just stating the facts. He's saying that whatever money is raised through real estate taxes will be spent on educating the kids who are gonna move into the houses that are sold when these people move into these residences. Now, it's all speculative though. Brian St. Pierre stated, and I heard him, that his estimate is that 30% of the units in that project will go to Woodbridge residents, which on 120 units is 36 units. This gentleman translates that into 36 houses being sold, 2 kids in each house, 72 new kids into the school system, and we have to pay for these kids. So his numbers, I tried to jot his numbers down when I was watching it for the 15th time. As you heard from Mr. St. Pierre, he anticipates charging in the high 4s for these units. Well, this gentleman said he can't get that because residences in Woodbridge are selling for $175 a square foot, so he estimates that each unit will sell for $350. Now, I disagree with that, because the $175 a square foot he's talking about is for older houses that need bathrooms, kitchens, septic systems, whatever. These are gonna be brand-new, state-of-the-art units with septics, with sewers, city water, and natural gas. And historically, I've seen units sell in Orange Fieldstone Village, the last one was $750,000 it sold for. I have 3 friends who live there, and they all paid in the high 5s. So I don't think it's a far cry for him to say he's gonna ask in the high 4s for these units. So he makes this, he says that the units are gonna sell for $350,000 per unit, which will generate about $1.2 million in real estate taxes. He then states that with the scenario of the 36 houses, 72 students, that it's gonna cost us $18,000 per student, 1.3 million, we're gonna lose $100,000 on the deal, and it's totally incorrect, which I'll go through in a minute. So that's basically the argument he's given, and because we're gonna lose money on the deal, the Board of Selectmen did not do their due diligence. If this project were to go forward, we will pay off the note, which will save us $400,000 a year roughly?
more, yeah.
A little more,
Yeah.
400,000, over the next
Half a
10,
million, yeah.
10 years, is it? Will it be
About 12.
12 years?
Yeah.
So the town will immediately realize a savings of $400,000 from paying off the note on the property. I took his facts, but I put my numbers to them, which I think are more realistic. I'm averaging $425,000 a unit, which means some units will sell for $375, some units will sell for $450, $475. I personally believe $425 is very low, based on what I know, but that's what I went with. If we sell 120 units at an average of $425,000, that will generate $1.4 million in taxes. I believe that's low, very conservative. Something that nobody has touched on, but that I have, is with these units, they're gonna have cars. And I estimate 2 cars per unit, 120 units is 240 cars. I estimate that will raise $168,000 in taxes on their motor vehicles. As far as the 72 students, first of all, you're not gonna have 72 students piling into the school system all at once. And even if you did, it's not $18,000 a student. $18,000 is the cost per student for the entire budget,
Correct.
right? In other words, when we put these 72 students in, we're not gonna hire another superintendent. We're not gonna change all the teacher salaries. The utilities will stay the same. Building maintenance will stay the same. Insurances will stay the same. Everything's gonna stay the same. We're just gonna have to incorporate 72 students into the system. So I took the assumption that 22 would be absorbed into the school through 2 in the 6th grade, whatever. And 50 more would have to be, we'd have to figure out a way to teach them, so maybe we'd have to hire 2 teachers at a cost of approximately $150,000, $75,000 a teacher. So that would, the car taxes that we're gonna collect will cover the cost of educating these kids. His assumption, and this is where he didn't do his due diligence, that it's gonna cost $18,000 for every student that enters that school is so wrong, and he just doesn't understand how boards of education and municipal finance work, but it's not gonna cost $18,000 a student. So with all this, we'll collect $400,000, or we'll save $400,000 by not having the note on the property. We'll raise $1.4 million in property taxes. We'll raise $168,000 in automobile motor vehicle taxes, for a total of just under $2 million. And at the most, we maybe are gonna have to hire a couple of teachers, so we should generate 1.8 million plus for the town. Once it's, again, this is gonna take time to complete, but once it's all completed, it certainly is not a losing proposition. Now, whether people want it or not, that's, yes, go ahead.
There's another flaw in that argument that he made, and that is that all of those people, the 30% who are gonna move there otherwise would stay in their homes, whereas they're more likely to move anyway, and we will not have the benefit of where they move to. They're gonna move to Stratford or Oxford, and or Orange, and those towns will get the benefit of the car tax and the property tax, and will get nothing.
Absolutely.
Those are not people who are going to just remain here because there's no place in Woodbridge.
And you can't assume that every person who buys one of these 36 houses is gonna have kids. I mean, the only house that sold on my street recently is across the street from me. It was bought by a young couple, no kids. They spent 2.5 years fixing the house up, when I say from soup to nuts. They just had twins about 1.5 years ago. And those twins will probably be starting Beecher Road School in 4 years. So it took nearly 8 years it will take nearly 8 years for this house to generate any kids in the school. I mean, is it possible that a couple of people might want to buy one of these houses and have no children? I don't know, but to assume that every one of them is going to generate 2.3 children, as he put it, it doesn't make any sense. So his presentation, which I heard 7 times at every board meeting there was, is so wrong it isn't even funny, and I'm surprised he doesn't realize that you can't use an $18,000 figure when you talk about educating kids.
Matt, could I add one
Yeah,
Ellen's
absolutely,
point, in
absolutely.
addition,
That's
we
for sure,
lost.
everybody can add.
Well, I'm not really a Board of
Yeah,
Finance
that's all
member,
right.
but here I am anyway,
Right.
sorry. But, we actually, I estimate, I can't remember the numbers, but we lost maybe 30 families to Fieldstone.
Oh, absolutely.
So those homes went, there's a Woodbridge residents who would have been here, in our,
Absolutely.
you know, and several of them have said to me, we wanna come back.
Yeah.
So we may gain them back, and they don't have any kids, so.
I think if the project is passed, well, if we vote to sell the land, there's a long way to go before the project goes. He's gotta do a lot of work to satisfy zoning and all this. But if it does pass, I can't imagine these units are not gonna sell because it's a beautiful area, it's private, as opposed to Fieldstone. Fieldstone, the units look very nice, but you look out your window and you see tractor trailers flying by on Route 34. I mean, it's nothing like the property that they're talking about building on. One last point, this morning, 3 o'clock, I was watching Channel 79, and the Economic Development Commission was on, and Mika was there, and they were talking about the project and so forth. And one of the members of Economic Development said, well, what's gonna happen if this gets rejected? What happens to that property if this gets rejected? And Mika kind of answered the question, but I'm sitting there saying, not much. I mean, let's be honest about it. We're hearing again and again and again from people, the mill rate is too high, taxes are too high. We can't sit here and say that if that property stays just the way it is, we'll continue to pay the note, but we aren't gonna be able to sink hundreds of thousands of dollars into that property unless people are willing to pay it in their taxes to keep that property at they want parks, and I don't see how we could possibly do that. So, the question becomes, we leave it the way it is, we don't leave it the way it is, but I just wanted to clear up these points, especially this last one, where he basically came to the conclusion that we would lose money on the deal. It's so patently incorrect that I had to bring that up. So, if anybody else would like to say anything,
Can I just,
you might guess.
so,
We're still on public comment, is that
Oh, yeah,
correct?
yeah.
so I've had some people ask me about the remediation that needs to happen on the property. And the implication is that if we don't do this thing, we don't have to do the remediation. It seems to me whether we sell the property or don't sell the property, if the remediation is required, we have to do it, right? So it's,
Yeah, but
again, that's sort of a specious argument again for me. Is that, am I wrong on
There's no
that?
pressure to do it, though.
Right, there's no timeline.
No time.
There's less
But
pressure.
There's remediation on the property that's potentially gonna be sold, and there's remediation on the property we are keeping.
Okay.
So, there's still remediation, as you know, Ellen, on the property that we're keeping, that will have to be addressed at some point.
Either way.
Either way,
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So it doesn't seem to, I mean.
We have a
it seemed to me-
ballpark on it, don't we, Tony, a ballpark figure?
Yeah, it's about,
600,000 or
yeah, about
something?
800,000.
But there's no, again, the state's not pressuring us, there's no time, it's
We've done some.
it's
already.
isolated to one area.
We've done some already.
We've done some, right, we've
Yeah.
done some already,
The
so.
old shed, right? Where they kept-
Yeah, where the
Right.
equipment
That's the
barn
one,
was.
that's what we did, it was the most significant
I
area.
just wanted to bring that up.
It won't have any bearing, it won't have any bearing on that.
Either way, I mean, just to me,
It's
that's.
there and we've gotta deal with it.
I guess my biggest concern, and as it's always been, was the actual building. And I think that that's something that needs to be addressed. Now, if we decide that we wanna keep that building.
Which building is this now?
The country club.
The clubhouse.
The clubhouse.
Clubhouse.
Oh, okay.
Right now, it's, in such a state of disrepair. I'm concerned about things living in it, people squatting in it through the winter. It's not very well secured. So-
We have boarded it up since we
Right,
turned off
it's-
I
yeah,
know,
But it's still there and
You're
it needs to
right.
be addressed.
but
And I've had comments from people outside of town, because this is not just something that everyone in Woodbridge knows about. I mean, the entire regional area knows what's going on, and the biggest, most recently brought up issue to me is that building is awful. And how are you gonna secure it? So boarding it up is one thing, but it's gonna continue to deteriorate, cause we're not doing any work to the outside. And it's gonna continue to get worse, and all the leaks and whatever else is happening is gonna continue to get bad. And that's more than $1 million to take down, and as part of this, even though it's not, part of the development, it's their responsibility to take it down,
He has
at whatever
agreed to take
cost,
it.
it's
He's
part of
taking
the
it down.
proposal.
at whatever cost, so
He will take it
that's
down.
part of the deal, is that he
Correct.
removes that building,
That's correct.
the clubhouse.
Yep.
And at whatever cost.
And when you said $1 million, if you heard
No, I said in excess of $1 million.
Mr. Warnett, he said, we can take it down a lot cheaper than you can do. You can take it down, so.
That's
But he did
absolutely
say, anything like asbestos, they bring in experts on that.
Right, absolutely.
But
I
he
mean, they have to.
believes-
They can't, you
he's got the
can't,
equipment
today
all
with
the-
liability,
He's big time
you
Warnett.
cannot,
Right.
you cannot, take down anything with
No, no.
asbestos, has to be remediated.
They'll do it, they'll know what they're doing, so.
I just wanna make one
Yeah.
point about the environmental remediation. I'm not sure about this, but as I recall, there's something called the Transfer Act.
Yes.
And
That's
we will
correct.
have to remediate the portion that we sell.
Correct.
When we sell it, we will not
Or
have
you
to
negotiate.
remediate the other.
I'm staying out of this.
Ultimately, you have to remediate the rest of the property, but there's no time limit on that, so it would trigger a certain remediation.
Okay.
Yeah, we're in the middle of the contract negotiations, so that's why I'm not, but you are correct, that, you know, we're looking to, depending on the part we sell,
Yeah.
we, you know, that will be part of that, so.
Well, in addition to the taxes we're gonna generate on an ongoing basis, there's also the conveyance taxes that we generate when these properties are sold.
And building fees.
There we go. So, I mean, just the issues that we've covered is paying off the debt, which saves us close to $500,000 a year, going on for, what, 12 years? And the revenues we generate, I think it's a win for the town. Plus, we get rid of this headache of a building.
So, the people of the town will decide at some point in the future, when we have a town meeting, and,
We hope to choose the
Whatever.
date for the special town meeting and the referendum in the very near
but I
future.
thank you for your indulgence. I just, listening to these presentations again and again and again, I'm sitting at home saying, you know, you don't know what you're talking about, so now we've cleared up some of them anyway. Okay, let's go on with our agenda. Administrative report, Tony.
Thank you. Our report through October has our fund balance at about $6 million, just under 12% of our projected expenses for the year. It's not much to report. There's a anticipated surplus. There was a surplus for sale of assets from the former Country Club of Woodbridge, but the selectmen voted to transfer the funds to engage a consultant. So that'll be later on in your agenda for you to review.
Land use thing.
Yep. There's a vacant position in the Board of Selectmen, which we will not fill, which will generate a surplus of about $50,000. And probably next month, we'll have the funding for the utilities for the country club, which we had wanted to close by June 30th, but it took us till almost September, so August, by the time into September, by the time we were able to shut all the utilities off, so there's to be some funds there necessary. But that's pretty much it. Those are the highlights.
Any questions for Tony? Tony, the audit status, I'm assuming it's done?
It's done. We have a draft, actually,
Okay.
which is the earliest that it's been in a long time. So we're hoping for a completion date of early December.
Okay. Woodbridge Board of Ed Financial Report. Tom, you want to cover that under your report?
Sure, I could do that.
If I saw, did I see correctly, there's a surplus?
Yeah.
Music to my ears.
Fasten your seatbelt.
Yeah. Capital budget meetings, they're coming up Tuesday, December 10th and Thursday, December 12th. Again, watching my meetings, all the boards are preparing for this. They're discussing it, so hopefully we'll see you then. 2 meetings. Anything else, Tony?
No. That's it.
Okay. LED lighting replacement project.
This is something that will require your approval.
Okay.
The town, the United Illuminating has a project where you undertake efficiency, if you have efficiency projects for your facilities, that you could fund the projects with a zero-interest loan through the utility, which I believe involves state funding, and then you pay back the loan over the period of savings from the what you're replacing. So this is something that we're looking into to do here. So we have a 0% loan from utility to cover LED lighting conversion in the Beecher School, Police Department, the Center Building, Fire Station, Town Hall, and the Public Works Building. We already did the library with a grant. So the library is already complete, and you've noticed in their budget, their electricity went down by quite a bit. as a result of the LED project, so it was successful there. The, so the project total, we received quotes from, or bids from 3 or 4 different vendors, and so the vendor we selected, the project cost was a little over $200,000. You see the spreadsheet. We'll just go through the spreadsheet. And there's $50,000 in utility incentives. So really, the balance of $150,000 is what we would finance. So then you take the utility savings, which is estimated there, and you get a payback for each facility in months. So you'll see Beecher School, for instance, has a loan term of 39 months, and after 39 months, the project is paid off, and the utility bill then is reduced by the project payment. So you can see each building has various payback terms. So it's essentially a way to get all LED lighting at no cost to the budget, because you use the savings to pay.
Yeah, so the savings are 64.7 and the payments are 64.1,
Correct.
so it's a wash.
Yep. Correct.
How can you not do it?
Right. And Amity has done this. There's a cap each year of $250,000, and Jim, I spoke with Jim Sisa, and they've and he helped review some of the documents because they've been through this process, and they've done it for all 3 of their schools. They've done lighting and some other projects with this program.
So you need a motion?
A motion, yeah.
Okay, then we can discuss it if you like. I'll make a motion that we approve the LED project as presented in these highlighted areas with a loan of $150,765.75, which will generate $64,706.40 in savings and require us to pay $64,106.83. Is there a second? Discussion. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. All righty, funding requests. Okay, the first one is line item transfer. This is line item transfer 1920-07, in the amount of $24,245 coming from other revenue to professional services, to professional landscaping design services for the former Country Club of Woodbridge. I will move acceptance of line item transfer 1920-07 in the amount of $24,245.
Second.
You just want to run through this, Tone? Is there anything special we need to know?
The selectmen wanted to just reserve some funds to, as it indicates here, assist in drawing up a plan for the undeveloped acres of the country club. And whether there's a sale or not, correct?
Right. We're just gonna put the money aside. It was money that was generated from the country club. We thought, let's do this. And, as you know, if the sale does go through, there'll be more than, there'll be 155 acres we have to deal with, but, and obviously the plan will depend on whether we sell the property or not, the whole, the portion of it, but the 2/3 of the property, we thought would be helpful to engage a land use analyst or a landscaper person, a consultant, to help us decide what the best use would be.
So until this is rectified, this will go into reserve?
Correct.
Correct.
We're
Then
not
once we
gonna-
know,
Correct.
Right,
That's
because
correct.
if we have 155 acres to deal with,
Plan might be different than.
right,
Right.
versus 100 or 95 acres.
So is
So-
this part of a larger plan to figure out how to develop the land either way?
Correct.
Because I know there's been a lot of discussion around
development
town
might
about
not
what
be
we're
the right
doing out
word.
there, whether it's gonna be a park, or whether it's gonna be
Correct.
sports fields, or whether there's gonna be, so this would include all of that, 2 scenarios, or would it start after?
Depends on what happens at the referendum.
So the
Either
referendum
way,
would determine
Right.
which direction we go.
correct, because if it's 150 acres versus 90 acres,
Right.
I'm hoping it's 90 acres that we are worried about, but I've gotten we had a preliminary committee meet and come up with, brainstorming kind of thing, but hiring a land use analyst will actually give us the best use, in my opinion. Actually, it was the unanimous opinion of the Board of Selectmen that we do this. And as Tony mentioned, it will be set aside in a fund, so it's not gonna be spent at this point, it's just reserving that money. And then we'll make a determination, depending on what happens at the referendum, how to go forward.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is there a specific professional that you have in mind for
Not
this?
at this point, but we have some names. We haven't chosen one, because we probably are gonna do an RFP, or is that what we do usually
Probably,
for
yeah.
finding that
So
person?
it'll be out there sort of before you hire anybody.
Absolutely.
Correct, yeah.
If you have names, great.
No, I think
But,
it should be a big picture, so
Right.
that's,
We have actually someone that just came to Woodbridge, a young woman who has some recommendations for us. I met with her because she used to do this for a living. She said, I don't wanna do it, but I'll give you some names, and so that's a
Right.
place to start. So that's an example of what we're looking for.
I mean, I don't think $24,000 for that kind of work is in any way, shape, or form excessive, so we should prepare ourselves that it could actually be
She
more than
seemed to think that
but
was
yeah,
right,
yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
depending on what we want and what we need, so, you're
Going
right.
forward.
Right, exactly, maybe need more, maybe a little less. Also, I guess University of Connecticut, I won't take up your time, but UConn has a program, and the only one in the state that trains land use analysts, so we may tap into that as well.
Is there any thought of doing that, some of this before the referendum, to give an idea of what might happen with the unused portion?
We had some staff in the town that went through and came up with some, brainstormed a few ideas, but I personally am reluctant to spend the money right now,
Right.
until we know what we're doing, but that's, it's up to the total board, but I think they all agreed unanimously just to hold on, put it in reserve, we know it's there.
Designing in the abstract is not going to be a good thing, so.
I couldn't
right.
imagine, I can't even weed my garden, so I hear you.
Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. All right, next is another line item transfer. And it's a line item transfer from road maintenance to contracted services to remove dead or dying trees, which I know we've talked about. And this is within Public Works. So I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1920-05 in the amount of $8,000.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Tony, anything you want to say? It's
No,
pretty
it's
self-explanatory.
pretty self-explanatory, yeah.
Anything else?
And this, oh yeah, I could make one comment. I don't anticipate that this Warren likes to transfer funds as he has available. So it could depend on what happens for later in the year, he may need more funds. It sort of all depends on what he has identified as first
And
trees.
what falls in the road.
Right, basically, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye? Okay. And finally, another line item transfer within the fire department, 1920-06 to replace a voice logging recorder. I heard that mentioned on that meeting when alarms are going off and everything, but I guess it's not working. So I'll move acceptance of line item transfer 1920-06 in the amount of $12,745. Any discussion on this? Does anybody wanna? I don't think there's anything special, Susan. I heard him
No.
talking about it, but it doesn't work.
It's just keeping pace
The
with
one
all
they
the
have is-
technology that's
Right,
been going on.
that's the basic
Yeah, he said
Yeah.
something about it's
Yeah.
XP and I don't know about that.
Don't go there.
Doesn't work, doesn't work. Okay, all those in favor? Aye, okay. Approval of minutes. We have before us the minutes of the October 17th meeting, and I will move acceptance of the minutes of the October 17th, 2019 meeting of the Board of Finance as presented. Any discussion, corrections, adjustments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Proposed meeting dates. This is a change, didn't we do this already as a change or something?
We looked at the budget meetings last
Oh,
time.
okay, all right,
These are for 2020.
okay. I will make a,
You can just look at them and vote next month.
okay, that's good,
Make sure everybody's okay with them.
very good.
Sent out a correction, right?
Yeah, only because the meeting, it said meeting dates for 2019 rather than 2020. Right, it was just the year.
I couldn't print it out either way.
Trying to get you out of here, Pete.
Don't worry,
Okay, Beth,
you'll wait for me.
the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just gonna give you an update. I pulled my report from the Board of Selectmen last week. Is that when we met? Seems like it was last month. Goes, whew, time's flying. I just reported to the Board of Selectmen that the council, I updated them that council for the sale of the portion of the former country club is David Groggins, and he's been working with the board, and we had an executive session when she gave us an update on the contract, so we're moving right along with the negotiations. That's for the country club. I just wanted to add one more thing about what you said in public comment. Thank you very much. There was some questions raised that the reason why the Board of Selectmen postponed the special town meeting and the referendum was done because residents were asking intelligent questions and the administration realized they had not done their due diligence. And I just let everyone know that could not be further from the truth. It was because we decided, and I believe this was the right thing to do, to have a fully negotiated sales agreement in place prior to the referendum vote so that all residents can view it and see exactly what we're doing. We didn't have it at the first referendum 9 years ago, whatever it was. So that was why we did it, just to correct the record on that, in case anyone asks you. We also voted unanimously to reserve the money to engage the services for a land use analyst, and we've already talked about that. I spoke again about the absence, passing of our building official, Terry Gilbertson. And just so you guys know, in case anyone asks, our wonderful building staff has really stepped up in the office to fill the void, and we've also hired a part-time interim building inspector. His name is Andy Rizzo. He worked in New Haven as a building official for, I guess, 30 years, almost, don't know the number, but quite a long time he's been there. And he's been very helpful to fill that void for us until we decide to, we're asking the staff to be, the public and just everyone be patient until we sort this thing out. But, and the staff is still, of course, grieving his loss. So, let's see, what else do I have to fill you in on? Just so you know, the Recreation Department recently purchased a removable portable ice skating rink, in case you want to take advantage. And they're going to be installing this winter at Center Road Tennis Courts. The group has been discussing holding a hot chocolate night and things like that. Just a fun thing. I wanted to. Yep. A little nervous about it being on the tennis courts, but I've been assured it'll be okay. So, let's see. Just an update, the town plans to finish the next step of renovations at the old firehouse by the end of the year. As you know, it's funded from a steep grant. This is the next phase. We haven't decided what we're doing with the use of the building yet, but we hope to do that in the next couple months at the Board of Selectmen, the final uses. But this is doing, at least taking advantage of the steep grant that we must use by December 31st. As you know, we had a terrible fire there in 2006. So we're making progress, and we have to determine how the building will be used before we can have an architect develop the drawings, get cost estimates, and eventual proposed funding to finish the building. We have a possibility of the Amity transition program occupying the second floor, so we're working all those things out. And let me see if I have anything else to tell you. Yeah, just an update. I don't know if you have heard about the Amity Woodbridge Historical Society and the town and the Darling House and the farmer and all of those wonderful things. So we're still working on that, and I'll keep you posted. I've decided, or I thought it would be a good idea if we all as a board, selectmen, take a look at the Darling House and the caretaker's apartment and the farm. So we're trying to schedule a meeting for that in the next week or two. So we'll see what happens with that. So stay tuned. I think it's important to continue farming, and I also think it's important that the society stays in the building in the Darling House. So hopefully we can come to some kind of compromise very soon. We're working on it. So anyway, that's all. So thank you. We did make a motion to have the town attorney and the attorney for the Historical Society begin negotiations on, I guess we want to say this correctly, mutually acceptably, to achieve mutually acceptable revisions to the current town Amity Woodbridge Historical Society agreement. It's been, I think the last time it was updated in 2007, so we need to work on that as well, and everyone agreed that we should do that, including the Historical Society. So the board voted unanimously to begin that process. And that's all I have. Yeah.
Is it the town owns the building?
That's correct.
And the Historical Society owns the contents?
Collection inside, correct, the Thomas
And
Darling.
is there some reason why it can't continue with both the Historical Society and the farmer?
The Historical Society feels that they need a separate caretaker in addition to the farmer. And the problem is a caretaker's apartment, which the farmer has been occupying to do his farming, and they would like the caretaker to occupy that apartment. So is that pretty much it in a nutshell? Yeah.
He's not a caretaker also.
Well, he was, but they had, it wasn't working, I guess. I'll put it that way. Okay, thanks.
Okay, liaison reports.
Thanks.
I attended a meeting on November 11th. Things are going fine. They're operating at this point with a surplus of about $525,000, and there really are no problems. They're, as ours, we just met the investment committee. Their OPEB trust and their sick and severance are doing very well. The stock market's doing very well. Everybody does very well. So they are doing very well. The big thing, of course, is the referendum. I believe it's December 4th, I think, Wednesday.
The Amity referendum.
The Amity referendum, yeah, let's get that straight. The Amity referendum, and it's it's gonna be two questions, if you don't remember. One is 3,194,300,000, which is primarily for mechanical replacements, chillers and acoustical improvements, et cetera, building type improvements. And then there's a $3,538,000, which will be for installing a all-purpose field, lights, bleachers, disability, in accordance with Americans with Disabilities, bleachers, a scoreboard, et cetera, et cetera. There doesn't seem to be much opposition. They had a district meeting, and I think 3 people showed up and spoke in favor of it, whereas the last time they proposed it, it was like a riot. I mean, and I think people are realizing that we're in the dark ages at Amity. Every other town, and they have to ship their kids, their athletes, to fields, to artificial turf fields to practice, because that's all they play on. So the days of grass fields, and this is really a state of the art. So I don't know. I'm guessing it's looking good, I think, but we'll find out on December 4th. Like I said, the first time around.
I think it's gonna actually be interesting, because I've heard some grumblings about the size of the referendum.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it will turn out. I don't think that there's a lot of activity against the second referendum as much as against the
Size of the bond
size
issue.
of the money issue.
The bond issue.
But, we'll see.
Well, we will.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for me. Paul?
The Board of Finance, the Board of Police Commissioners met on the 6th, and we're tracking a little high on overtime, but that's due to vacancies and so on. Things are pretty stable at the police department, and I presented the findings of the budget task force, and I look forward to working with the commission on implementing those recommendations. And I think that's really all for police.
Okay, Human Services met on November 4th, and kind of hit the highlights. They had St. Pierre was there, Brian St. Pierre, and he presented, and there was discussion and comments similar to what you talked about, Matt. And the budget review task force was presented, not by me. Sandy Stein presented that, and I think it was pretty well received from what I've heard. The 6-year capital improvement budget, just some of the highlights. They're looking to replace the 2005 Ford Crown Victoria. It's 151,000 miles right now, and that's scheduled out. I think that's out for fiscal year 21, and it's about $35,000. They're also looking to get some type of a carport similar to what the PD has. I'm not sure where they're thinking about putting that, but that's something that they're putting into their budget as well. The 8 to 10 passenger van that they just got, budget cost was $13,400, and the grant was approved, and DOT's paying 80% of that, right, Tony?
Correct.
80% of that?
13,000 is our portion.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And, let's see, youth services, they had a Halloween spooktacular, it was a costume party. They had about 83 students there, which is great. There was a after-school cooking program that, was today, I'm assuming it went up. I didn't get an update today on that, but, they also have their Toys for Kids, program kicked off on November 7th. And their applications for income eligible families, they're taking until December 14th. And there's a box for toy donations in the library and the center building, so if people want to donate gifts for the children. The center project, I believe it's all completed now, right, Tony? There was still some work that was being done as far as
That's correct.
the fencing?
Yep, that's all, should have all be completed.
Okay, so that's all gone, which is great. And the lounge is painted, and carpet tiles were put down. The mural was painted over, but they had some great pictures taken of the mural, and they made posters out of them, so if people are interested, I think you contact Human Services and get a copy. That's really nice the way they did it. You can see what it used to look like. And they've got those up in the center building, or in the lounge area. And, let's see, talked about the ramp project. I think that's really about it. Those are the big items, the highlights.
Ellen, do you have anything?
So Recreation met on Monday night. Just two things I want to mention. The road race was successful, although with lower participation. They think because there was a conflict with an event in Bethany, and they'll work that out next time. And the Recreation Commission voted to contribute $3,600 from the road race to the Woodbridge Food and Fuel Fund. They also made mention of the impact of the minimum wage going to $12, but that was all. It just seems like mention of it, so I'm sure, it seems like, will affect some town budgets,
They
but.
pay most of their seasonal and part-time employees close to.
Yeah, they didn't say a
minimum wage.
number,
Yeah.
except, that's it.
Tom?
So the,
One other thing before you start,
Yep.
which I forgot, was the Living Treasure dinner and fundraiser auction. They raised a little over $10,000.
Great.
nice, awesome.
And I think a lot of that came from the auction items, which they had some great auction items. So if anyone has an opportunity to go next year, we don't know who's gonna be represented, but it's a great fundraiser for them, and like I say, over $10,000 was really nice.
So the Amity Board of Ed, Finance Committee and Board of Ed met on Monday. Woodbridge, right, Woodbridge, sorry, did I say Amity? Woodbridge, sorry. Too many meetings every night this week. And a couple things that I wanted to bring up. One is I think that they have heard loud and clear our intent to try to have them come in at a somewhat lower raise than last year, shall we say? And they're working diligently, so I think they're doing well with that, that they have actually formed a committee to sort of look at efficiencies. And so they've been talking about a lot about how to make that budget come in more in line with what we want. So I want to give them credit for that. I think they've done a good job of that. If you look at the numbers and Tony, jump in. I mean, I think the bottom line is that they have, I'm just going to do real highlights on it, and if you want to do more details, that, there's a surplus right now. One of the things that came up is that is apparently fairly due to some of the special ed stuff that's going on. But they want to emphasize that of course, as we know, special ed is very volatile.
We know.
What they're trying to do is keep kids in the district and the school, because if they have to send them out of district, it costs a huge amount of money.
Right.
If you look at it closely, there's some anticipation of increasing some of the special ed service, and creating another classroom for sort of behavioral issues in line with some of the safety concerns that have been brought up. Again, the idea of keeping these kids in the school as much as possible, so they, keeping a close eye on what's going to happen in the future. But right now it's looking pretty good, and trying to keep them in. They have talked about trying, for those kids that have to go out of district, at the Board of Ed meeting, they talked about trying to look for some synergy in transportation costs, perhaps with Bethany and Orange. If it turns out that there are kids who are going to the same place at the same time, perhaps they could save some money on that. The other thing is I think we should look at, extended day is doing very well. I don't know if folks are aware that, even though it's separate, it's sort of connected to the school, so there are special needs kids who are going to the extended day that requires sometimes one-on-one care, and in the past, the Board of Ed was covering the cost of that. That, I guess, was last year that they decided that would be handled by extended day, and that so far it's working fine. They're keeping a close eye on what that will mean. But their fund balance is very good, and so one of the things they're doing, if you look at let's see, what sheet is that? F6 of the Woodbridge Board of Ed combined balance sheet. You can see that the cafe and the extended day are doing very well, but one of the things that's interesting, and I think it's important to bring up, is if you'll notice that they're planning on spending $27,000 to replenish the poured rubber surfaces of the playgrounds. So this is one of those things where they wanted to point out that some things that the Board of Ed does not come to us with capital budget expenses, because extended day is covering some of those, because of course they're using those facilities and there's wear and tear. And so this is one of the examples where the surfaces of the playgrounds needed to be replaced, but we won't see that in the Board of Ed budget, and I think that's a good way of doing it. They're looking at sort of using some of those funds. All in all, I think they're doing very well. I think that they've heard the message, and so it'll be interesting to see. The next Board of Ed Finance meeting is on the week before the Board of Ed. I think it's December 9th, to plan on, so that they have it set up in time to come in front of us. So the Board of Ed Finance Committee is meeting a week before the regular Board of Ed meeting, before they come to us. So I think that they're doing well. I don't know, Tony, if there was anything else you wanted to.
No, that's pretty comprehensive.
I think they've done very well. So.
Thank you. Susan?
I attended the Library Commission meeting. They have their budget planning well in hand. They did hear about the what are we calling it now? The Budget Review Task Force. I'm not going to speak for what their response was, but I think we're asked to be mindful going forward that a library is not solely a transactional effort. And I think that point was well made that evening. I'll also tell you that there's a national and state movement afoot to change library fines. And it goes to the heart of policy at libraries, and it was actually quite an interesting conversation. They're gonna be discussing it from a policy and potential implementation point of view over the next several meetings. I also attended the Fire Commission meeting. Those of you who saw it on camera, as Matt did, know that it was a very exciting meeting. A lot happened. I'm not gonna go over everything. I'm just gonna tell you this. Halloween night, they had 30 calls on Halloween night. Evidently it was a very stormy night. I was out of town. They ended up having to self-dispatch because our this regular dispatch system was somewhat overwhelmed. I know that there's, I guess they're on the December 11th Board of Selectmen agenda, and I think they're gonna be coming and talking about some of that.
We invited the police as well.
Okay, the second console
Two
and
separate
the
funds.
switch to the digital system, as part of the new radio system, has now been implemented, and that's all nice. They also heard an update on the budget task force, and work was brought up to date there. Monday night is the Thanksgiving interfaith service to be held at B'nai Jacob this year, which has nothing to do with the Library Commission or the Fire Commission, but I just thought of it.
Also, it was also heartwarming that they held a pancake breakfast for Andrew Esposito's wife, who, of course, you all know, had a tragic accident, and if I heard correctly, they raised $24,000.
They raised quite a bit of money.
Awesome.
They
And
raised
there's
a
another
lot
one,
of
right?
money.
Yeah,
there's
I think they're having another one
fundraiser
too, right?
By the way, they had 4,000 people attend Truck or Treat.
I think it was the busiest we've ever had. But
It's
that
always
was on
crowded.
Friday night, because Halloween was on Thursday, and it basically
Because of the
was
storm.
unofficially canceled, I think, except for Penny Lane, of course. Penny Lane was full of people. But Friday night, and then clean up on Saturday, and then Sunday pancake breakfast. That was an all-day affair, but it was so heartwarming to see so many people there. People who didn't know the Esposito family. And Orange Fire Department and Bethany Fire Department both were there to help cook and clean up, set up, so.
I forget how many
When's-
things of pancake batter they went through.
Wait a minute, Sean told us,
Yeah, I forget.
but I forget.
Of course he did.
But what I do remember
Unbelievable.
is that at Truck or Treat, they served 2,000 hamburgers.
Yeah.
I don't even wanna think about that.
Well, they also had,
It's sort of
I
like,
hear they
what?
had french fries and.
They had,
French fries
yeah.
and
Needless,
hot
he
dog,
went through every metric.
clam
It
chowder.
was an interesting meeting,
chowder.
I'm just gonna say.
Did Chips donate some of the
All of it.
pancake?
All
Chips
of it.
donated the
Which is
pancake.
really
But I mean,
amazing.
a mind-boggling amount. He said it and I don't remember what it was, but
And
They were really
Matt, you
yummy.
need to get more
I
rest.
know. I'm a junkie.
Stop watching this
I'm a
79.
Channel
Not
79
watching
junkie.
stuff at 3 in the morning.
I'm telling you, I wake
What
up,
time is that
it's
meeting?
interesting.
The
Puts me to
service on
sleep
Monday night.
sometimes too, but it's good.
I'll look, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, I'd like to.
I will say, I happened
I
to be
don't have it on
outside
my
in my
calendar.
yard on Friday night, just as the fireworks went off, and I was surprised, because
Ah,
I could see it through the woods, it was very
Oh, yeah.
nice.
yeah, it was
It was a
fantastic.
looked like a pretty good display, I have to say.
Great show.
It's always a good display, yeah.
We do not have meetings on December 3rd and 5th, is that correct?
Yeah, well, they changed them.
We
changed them.
But they're,
It's a week later.
A trip plan?
In answer to Beth's question, the Thanksgiving service is at B'nai Jacob on Rimmon Road at 7 PM.
7, good, because they have a meeting here till 6.
It's
I'm
always a
worried.
nicely attended
Good,
event
good.
by our
Yeah.
It is.
community, and
It's
and
lovely.
we should all be there to support
And
each
each
other.
each faith has it, well, they do B'nai, they do it at Assumption, they do it at, the Trinity,
Congregational
they do
Church.
it, so each year it goes to a different,
It rotates.
And we have the interfaith choir, one of us at this table is in that choir, and
You.
it is not nothing to sing
It's
with your
wonderful.
fellow members of your community. It's a very meaningful experience.
I think the Assumption choir will.
Yeah,
do it.
Assumption Choir's gonna be there.
They're
That's
there,
great.
we
Yeah.
all go to rehearsals,
Yeah.
Right,
we all.
it's
I'll
wonderful.
tell them to look for the woman crying.
I cry at the rehearsals, I cry at the rehearsals.
She's on the Board of
It's very
Finance.
meaningful, I can't tell you.
She did a marvelous job, by the way. I will commend her in public at the Living Treasure. Once again.
And she cried there too.
Yes, you
You did, I forgot about that, yep. But it was wonderful. You did a great job.
This could be embarrassing, I don't care.
Yeah,
It's
right,
too bad,
I don't blame
people.
you.
It's good.
Okay, a motion to
You're
adjourn, I'll make a
passionate
motion.
person.
I'm a
It's
passionate
okay.
person.
All those in
I'm
favor? Aye. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving.
All you guys.
Susan, you'll be getting your electronic versions tomorrow
Of what?
of the capital budget books.
Oh, thank you.